All right, guys, welcome back to the show. So today we are here with a really special guest because he has done a lot in the real estate business. And it's really interesting because I was reading his background and he's actually has a background in organizational and business psychology. And if you guys listen to some of the things that I like to talk about, I'm big into mindset. So definitely want to dig right into that with our guest today and dig really deep into the psychology of success. So if you guys are interested in doing that, make sure to stay tuned for the show. But without further ado, I want to bring on my guest for the day. He is a real estate coach, a real estate broker, a really successful wholesaler, and of course, a psychologist through and through. So I want to welcome my guest to the show, Rafael Cortez. Welcome to the show, Rafael.
Thanks so much for having me, man. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, no problem, man. I think, you have a lot to offer and you got great energy. So, let's just, dig right into it. And for our audience here who might not know who you are or haven't seen some of your stuff on social media, I know you got a big following on social media. So, for our audience who don't know who you are, can you kind of just like dig into your background and dig into who you are and like how you kind of got started in the business world and, where you are today?
Yeah, sure thing. I started, I actually launched my first business when I was 21 years old. I started as a firefighter when I was 19. So a lot of that, those conversations that I was having with older people around me, the captains, and just kind of, steered me in that direction. The bigger, think per se, right? But yeah, this is years ago. And I launched that first business in a whole different space. It wasn't real estate space. And it was a transportation, non-emergency medical transportation business. So I grew that for several years. But in the interim, I started doing real estate investments. So I started with flipping and kind of transitioned my way into wholesale, which is usually the other way around. But
Right.
Yeah, I started with flipping, wholesale, and eventually growing a brokerage and everything else in between. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's awesome, man. So I mean, you started at 21, and yeah, I'm currently 21 years old as well. So you definitely
Okay.
started quite early. So I mean, let's kind of like talk a little bit about that. Starting out really young in business. I mean, you said you have a lot to talk about when it comes to psychology. So when it comes to like just starting out the mindset, right? So what are some of the struggles that you had to go through, especially in an industry like real estate? What are some of the things that you had to overcome just in your own mind, and how were you able to do that?
So I got into real estate 2009. That's the first
Yeah.
flip that I did, right?
Right.
But I mean, getting into business altogether, I was around your age when I did that. But a lot of the mindset stuff really came from lack of clarity.
Mhm.
I didn't know what the business, really was. You know what I mean? I heard people who had
Right.
businesses, but I didn't know the long line, the long, nights, the extra work, the periods where you don't see cash coming through the door, when you're spending a lot of money and not making money yet, that sort of thing. So,
Right.
all those, hassles or pains of growth, really didn't register, right? But the biggest thing that was kind of um daunting on me was the lack of clarity. Like, where did I want to go as an entrepreneur? What I knew I wanted to jump into something, and I chose the thing that was next to me at that point. That was that transportation business, but I didn't really have this not even an exit strategy, right? I think it's always good to have an exit strategy every time you're breaking into business, because not necessarily that you're going to sell the thing, but it forces you to think from the end. Okay, cool. So if I'm thinking from the end, how can I create that clarity to get to that space? So you start thinking, okay, reverse engineering the whole process, and then you get to a point where you're at now, right? Now you have some clarity of the steps that you need to take as you go forward. And one thing to understand, like it's if you're jumping into entrepreneurship, and I'm assuming most of your audience is going to be, the younger audience,
Right.
it's cloudy, right? It gets confusing. It gets, scary at some points, because you can't have those conversations. People usually don't understand the conversations. Um, you know, uh, when as much as we do, right? We're in that space of putting ourselves on the line, and risking things. for the sake of that dream that we're pursuing. So one of the biggest things is going to be clarity. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of stuff that, get in the way as far as mindset goes, but I think experience helps you work through a lot of that. It's that instant gratification really doesn't do a lot for for longevity in business.
Right.
So it's if you're jumping into entrepreneurship, think about the long-term play.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's all about thinking, like you said, thinking backwards, right? Thinking about, thinking from the result, not to the result, if you will.
Right.
I think that's very important, especially for, somebody starting in business, right? Is it important, I think, in your opinion, like to know what your end goal is, or like what your focus is before you even start? Because I know there's a lot of people, and it's me included as well, just you want to start businesses just because we don't want to work for people.
Yeah.
But when I started, it wasn't like a very clear, this amount of money or these things that I want, or like you said, like this exit strategy.
You got to have a guiding beacon. There has to be something that gives you a degree of guidance of where you're headed, right? Otherwise, you're just going to be shooting at anything, and I mean, and then anything you hit is going to be okay. But it doesn't really, for example, I wasn't thinking about what I like doing when I started in that wholesaling or that transportation business, right? And I found out years, into it, I found out that I hated the thing. So just, the fact of, staying in the logistics, the industry wasn't one of those, that fulfills you at a personal level and that sort of thing. And it just didn't line up with the person that I wanted to become. That was one of the things. So if you tap into something that it's not necessarily the end all be all, but it's somewhat in that direction, I mean, you're already winning. So it's important to have, set some simple goals, right? Simple goals, and ask yourself the question whether those goals align with you and the person that you want to become in 3 years, 5 years. We're always changing. We're always evolving. So whatever, if you think you have a purpose right now, I guarantee you that purpose is going to be different in 5 years.
Right.
Let me put it to you that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. We don't think it is, but just kind of, if you look back, right? I think for people, it's important to start looking back at their experiences, right? Like what were you at 5 years ago, right? Is it the same place you are today? If not, then kind of expect the same patterns, right? Because we live in patterns.
Yeah. So I think about, I mean, you're 21 now. Do you feel like you have the same mentality that you did when you were 17?
No, not at all.
Exactly. So now when you were 17, you had different priorities, right? Maybe your priorities were different. Your priorities, your context, everything around you is gonna push you to look for a certain meaning. And that's really what purpose is. Purpose, when we pursue that, that big, idea, or that big, the concept of purpose is really meaning. It's what it's coming down to. Okay, what's meaningful to us? That's going to help us wake up every morning and help us have the tenacity, the fuel that we need to, pursue the dream that we're going after, right? To catch that degree of meaning in our lives. And this whole thing gets deeper and heavier. At the beginning, honestly, what happens is we're looking for attention. I think it goes that way, right? At first, it's attention. Then it becomes a matter of when you get hit by the real world and you have to, start paying your own way through life. Okay, cool. Now it's almost, putting yourself in a state of survival, right? Okay, now I got to figure things out. So now meaning or the attention doesn't matter as much as, okay, like the revenue that's coming in. So it's transitioning through those stages of life, and the meaning that we desire at that point is going to change. Now, when you go through the ringer and do the trench work and start building and learning, growing as an individual, you have the opportunity to expand your perspective, right? So that meaning changes.
Yeah, for sure. Like,
it just gets bigger. Yeah,
it makes perfect sense, because like when you're like your priorities change, and that's going to determine everything, right? Because I think what people don't realize, especially when they're younger, is the thing that we focus on grows. And that's something I hear a lot. It's something I like to say a lot. And if you're, this is your number one priority, whether if it's, before it was attention, now it's revenue, and maybe in the future it's fulfillment and helping, as many people as you can. If you focus on that, that becomes your priority. And that's the thing that's going to grow, right? And I don't know, you can probably touch on that as well.
Yeah, well, no, absolutely. So we have different things that are going to fuel us along the way. And I think it's important to understand that. It's important to understand that the same things that are fueling you right now, they're going to evolve along with you, and it's going to be something different. But whatever that is, for example, at the beginning, for me jumping and taking the leap, it was literally ego that was fueling me. Okay, people were trying to tell me that I couldn't build a business, and in my head, okay, I know I got what it takes, and it was like an ego taking over. In that case, it was beneficial, right? It's kind of pushed me that way. But then I started doing, taking a lot of decisions that were too radical, and I didn't have the experience for that, for that path yet, and I wasn't looking outside of me for answers. So reaching out to people who had the experience, who knew more.
Right.
And that sort of thing. So, I made a lot of wrong, calls and paid, a lot of stupid tax, going through
Yeah.
through the process of becoming an entrepreneur. But that, that sense of ego was the thing that kind of sparked it and fueled me, right? Okay, I know I can do better.
Right.
And after, going through the ringer a couple of times, I realized that, it may be something that, helps me at times, but it's more detrimental than not. So now I learned how to put my ego in check when it came to making decisions, having conversations with different people, and using different fuels to push me through the process. Now, long story short, my purpose of my fuel has evolved into empowering entrepreneurship. Like, that's the thing that pulls me, right? You get to this space where you're in survival mode, you need to pay bills and go through the the life, responsibilities. But if you have something that's intrinsic, something that's within you, and it's burning from within, and it's a space of understanding at a level of self, that's going to push you a lot further than anything that can motivate you from the outside, meaning the car that you want to get or the money that you want to get, right? And I think that comes along with experience, and just putting yourself through the repetition of situations, right? You have ups, and then you have lows, and I'm sorry, you have highs and you have lows, and everything in between. And at the end of it, the day, you come to this space of understanding of, like, I'm doing all these things, this shit's crazy, like, what do I really want, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
and I mean, it's a big, heavy question.
Yeah, and not enough people, I don't think, ask that question to
Yeah.
themselves. It's like, what do I really want? And I've,
Um,
probably run into situations where somebody else asks them that, and they get all weirded up and they don't really know how to answer the question.
yeah.
And it isn't like, it's not easy to answer that question, right? If you've gone through your entire life without thinking about it, it takes a while to kind of get clear on what do you actually want.
Well, but let me throw this at you too. It's not a permanent answer. Like, what you
Right.
want right now, you know what I mean?
Oh
Even
yeah.
if you think at a lifelong, from a lifelong perspective, what you want right now, it's gonna be different than what you're gonna want. When you start growing a family, when you start, when you're into your second or third business, and now instead of the revenue, impact becomes more important.
Yep.
That sort of thing.
Yeah.
A lot of times we go through life and we don't find ourselves until we're 40.
Right.
So it's different things that are going to be shifting,
Yeah.
as you go through the process of that. But yeah, it's not whatever you want, it's not permanent. However, it's a very, very important question to ask, because thinking about that or envisioning that and really clarifying what that is going to push you through whatever stage you're in right now. And like you
Right.
said, we move in stages and patterns. So
Right. Exactly. And I think probably like a question most people will have and for themselves is just like, when do you know this is no longer fulfilling, right? Because we all know that, if you want to do something, you need to persist and you need to push through the failures and the pain points and everything. But, at some point, it just gets to the point where we're just talking about, where it's just not what you want anymore and you need to move on to the next thing. So maybe it's a business that you're currently growing now, or it's a stage or aspect of your business that you've been trying to grow for a year, but now you're just at a point where you're starting to question whether or not this is actually what you want, because other things in your life could have changed within that time period to, like you said, make you change your wants, make you change what you actually want to do in life. So I mean, is there a point that you think that we need to kind of like just sit down and maybe reconsider what we're doing?
I think there is. I mean, but now it's a matter of asking yourself asking yourself why, right?
Right.
If you're struggling through, any stage of life, or any, building up business, or anything that you're trying to get through, and the struggle is still there, like, you got to ask yourself why, like, what's going on? Is it a matter of self accountability? Is it a matter of me buying into my own ill thoughts, or bad mindset? What's going on there? That's the first thing, because it's when you have a contaminated thought process, per se, right? If you start something else, the same thing is gonna evolve. So you have to dig a little deeper, and find out the root of, okay, this is not working, but why is it not working? Now, if it's something outside of you, right? I don't know, the for example, I launched a respite business, a home health business, a while back. The numbers were good. We were going through the permits and all that stuff. And then there was an adjustment in federal budgets that our margins went from here to like here. So pretty much it just became, one of those industries that could sustain, but not really give me the profits that I was looking for. Right. So I pivoted from that. Right. That's outside of me. It's something that I can't control the federal budget. And so, okay, I pivoted into something else, but I've also had it where I can think of another business as well. Actually, the beginning of my transportation business, it wasn't panning out. I worked for free for close to 3 or 4 months, and I couldn't get the contracts that I needed. I was going through this process, and the question that came up was like, this is not working. I already put a lot of time and effort and money into this thing. I need to move on. But I was seeing other businesses flourish. Like, there was other businesses like mine that were working. So if that industry is going, the industry is strong. It's not gonna be a business thing. It's gonna be a you thing. And I don't mean you as in personally you, but
right. Yeah, no, yeah. Like
from the personal standpoint. Yeah. So it's important to have that conversation, because if you feel like you really want to be in that space, but your personal habits, your tenacity, your thick skin is not there yet, that can be fixed. We can tweak those. We need to tweak those actually to make anything else work. You're gonna get hit with adversity. That's by definition part of being an entrepreneur. So
it's part of being alive. It's you can't avoid that. Like adversity, and we hear this all the time. Like, choose your hard, right? Like working out is hard, but being fat and lazy and having diseases is hard as well. So like it's your choice which one's hard, right? And you're gonna struggle in all parts of life. It's just now up to you to choose what you want to struggle in. And I kind of want to go back to like what you're talking about, your two different stories with your home care business and then your transportation business as well. So when you were looking and you made the decision to kind of pivot from your home care business, you were looking around like everybody in the industry, it just wasn't working out, and you didn't necessarily see a way to even get creative.
Yeah. So existing companies got cuts. Like they got budget cuts. They had to cut back. I saw a lot of people being laid off. So there was a surplus of employees, people that were qualified to do that job, because there was just cutbacks everywhere. So and that may be like, sometimes you're gonna get hit with transitionary periods. We're going through a transitionary period right now in real estate. It's crazy. It's insane. But it's not permanent. So like there's no permanent essence to it. It's going to be, I don't know, maybe 6 months, a year, or maybe a little long. I don't know. Right. But it's a transition. It's something that, like, if you go through that period and adjust, as you're going through the process, you start looking at okay, where are the voids? Where can I pivot? Where can I, what can I tap into? In times like that, it's more important to be resourceful than have all the resources, right?
Right.
How can I partner up with other people and cut my overhead? How can, the margins are dropping. Okay, cool. Where can I create more margins? For example, if you have a brokerage, right? I own a brokerage. One of the things that we're contemplating is partnering up with a title company so we can make more money in multiple parts of the deal. So, it's shifting as you go through the process is important. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's a good point that you brought up. I didn't even think about this, right? You kind of connecting the dots there. We're going through a transitionary period in real estate, and a lot of our listeners are either real estate investors or real estate agents. And I think it's interesting, right? So I think people might hear this or see this and they think, is it time for me to quit real estate? I've been in real estate maybe a year, maybe 2 years, maybe a couple of months, but this is not giving me the margins that I want. This is not, is the industry just going to collapse or whatever? And you're a brokerage, you own a brokerage, so what is your take on that for people who are in the real estate space, whether they're an agent? I guess it's a little bit different for investors, but mostly for agents and potentially brokers as well who are out there who see this as a transitionary period, but they're not sure whether they should completely pivot and change businesses or kind of, go through it and be creative.
So what happens again, it's going back to that stickability, right?
Right.
What we were talking about earlier. How long can you stick with things and that, for example, real estate, it hasn't died, right? Like it's the number one form of investment. If you look at everything else, even the stock market and all that stuff, real estate is the consistent that if you look at decade after decade after decade, it always comes up. If you backtrack in sets of 10, right, through the years. So if you look at 10 years ago, the prices were lower than they are now. 10 years before that, the prices were lower than they were then. So it's one of these things that's going like this. It's longevity, right? If people absolutely bail out right now, and they stop all their efforts and tap into something else, they're gonna have to learn that new industry, right? By the time that happens and they get proficient in that, this is gonna pick right back up. So my recommendation is if, for example, agents, right? A lot of agents are, they have a full-time job and they, real estate license is one of those side things that they do. Like, don't stop the prospecting. Don't stop the conversations that you need to have with sellers. Allocate and time block. Allocate time and time block your day, right? To, okay, cool. I'm going to do 2 hours of prospecting every single day. You can do that. We do that for wholesaling all the time. It's one of the things that I keep telling my students, like, do not stop, altogether. Like, don't come to a halt. You can move slower. That's fine. But don't stop your efforts, because then you're going to have to rebuild from zero whenever the time comes.
Right. Yeah. I've heard all the time, like, if you are able to survive this next 12, 16, whatever, 18 months, then you can thrive in whatever happens next. So it's no storm lasts forever, right? That's the phrase that I hear all the time. And like you said, if you're quitting now, you're just relearning industry, and then you look back, and then real estate picks back up again, and then you go back and reactivate your real estate license. You do whatever, and then you're in the cycle of just trying to time the market or time the industry, or whatever, and that never works.
Then again, ask yourself, like, how proactive are you being? Like, how proactive are you being in the prospecting efforts? There's agents crushing it. I have agents who, they're closing multiple deals on a monthly basis in different markets. I'm in Arizona, right? So I have agents in a couple of different cities, and yeah, they're doing business all over the place. And then there are agents who are not, they're absolutely not doing anything.
Right.
How proactive are you being, right? How are you going to the meetings? Are you putting yourself out there? Are you creating partnerships with title companies? Are you reaching after investors or people who are still buying portfolios, right? Like, no, nobody's buying. That's a lie. There's people that are buying every single day, even in times like this, right? Because they understand the long play. The rates are too high. You can do buy downs on rates. There's always things that can happen. They're not going to be ideal and picture perfect, but there's always ways of doing business, right? And pivoting into something that's panning out, that's working.
Yeah, exactly. It's never, it's never outside, right? It's never an environmental impact. If you look back at even, like you said, you got into real estate in like 2008, 2009, right? That's, most people think is like the worst time to get into real estate. So maybe you can give like your take on that. When you were getting in that industry, was people, people around you trying to talk you out of it, or?
Everybody was freaked out. But what happened was I put together some cash because of the business that I built. And I was afraid of losing that. So I was like, I got to put it somewhere where, something that I understand. My background, like in high school and college, my summer job was always construction. I would do, create or work, concrete and framing and that sort of. So I knew how to swing a hammer. Like, all right, I'm going to go fix a house and sell it, put it on the market. So that was really my thought process. Not very elaborate back then, but it worked, right? It worked for the purpose of me, tapping into this space. during that time. I was like, no, I mean, I'm looking at the prices. It may not be, rocket science. And I'm telling you, I didn't make a lot of money on that first one, but it was like one of the best schoolings that I've ever had. It's I mean, it was just, a game changer when it came to understanding how the whole industry worked. 2009, yeah, people were freaked out, but the property values were, I mean, through the floor, so it was a great time to buy. People were still scared. They weren't, buying, they were selling super cheap. There was a lot of inventory and that sort of thing, but it was a good opportunity for me to come in and then do something with it. Right. I wasn't, if I would have held on to that property for longer, meaning, I don't know, 5 years, right? I would have made a lot better because of appreciation.
Right.
But at that time, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah. Right. I mean, like it's always a learning experience when it comes to, anything at all, especially in real estate. But it's pretty interesting, right? Like when most people see, this big recession, right, in 2009, like it's time to leave the real estate industry. The people who are, they see the opportunity like yourself, they come in and they make it big. And I mean, we've seen this throughout history over and over again, right? Not just with 2008, 2009 investors and agents in real estate, but also if you look all the way back to like the Great Depression, right? Like the most, I think still like that was the period of time where the most amount of millionaires were made was during like the period of like total, economic collapse because some people saw the opportunity.
Well, that and they were proactive.
Right.
Okay, they were proactive. They actually, took action when action was needed, when everybody was, kind of putting down their weapons and laying down to die. The people who saw opportunity came in and actually figured out how to do things, even without capital. Like now, for example, there's so many different ways. Wholesaling is a great strategy, and I mean, it's worked for the last 12 years since I tapped into it, and it's a great strategy to build wealth, right? And the barrier to entry is super low. When you have a deal, when you source a property, you find a seller that's willing to do something with their property. You have that, right? That's part of the wholesaling process. And then you can do a whole bunch of other stuff. Then you can create a financing, you can do innovations with it. The exit strategy can change, right? But you need to have that deal first. But I mean, there's so many different ways to go about it, even when the rates are through the roof.
Right.
It's just a matter of just being resourceful again.
Right. Resourceful, proactive.
As opposed to having, needing to have all the money in the bank to do something.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's what most successful real estate investors, that's how they think, right? I was talking to this big investor that I know here in Houston, and he was like, even now that he has built up capital, he still thinks, not with like a broke mindset, right? He still thinks, what would I do here if I had no money, right? And how can I close this deal? And that's the way to do it. And I think it all comes from a thinking and a mindset thing. When you start to realize that it's not your outside environment that controls you, and it's you that controls everything around you, then you begin to see more opportunity. You start taking more action. You be more proactive. You don't let the noise around you just disturb you, basically.
Yeah. And it's not to say that there's not going to be, challenges thrown at you, right?
Right.
But we do have the ability to choose how we react to all that stuff. Okay, I mean, if there's adversity, if there's something going on. I mean, the Fed did their thing, and then the rates skyrocketed. Now we see inventory like just spike, right? Like that's a big change in the real estate market. You can say, well, I mean, shit's in the fan. I'm gonna leave this industry, right? Or figure out different ways. Okay, you come back and restructure your numbers, figure out your process, and then adapt to this one seasonal change that's happening during your time in it. So
right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in a nutshell, it's you have to be adaptable. If you're an entrepreneur, regardless of what industry you're in. Real estate is a very volatile industry. Things change, on a weekly basis now. We're living dog years when it comes to real estate in terms of property values and all that stuff. But it doesn't mean that it's not doable, right? Now, if you're in the digital space, if you're in the, whatever space, you're still going to have to be adaptable to what's happening. If Facebook changes an algorithm on your PPC campaigns, if YouTube changes something and now you have less reach and you can't tap into, the same audience that you were tapping into last month, that kind of stuff. they roll out new things on social media every single, week, in
Right.
terms of features and new things that you can come into, to incorporate into your whole digital strategy. Like that takes being able to adapt. So it's the same
Yeah.
thing when we're looking at, the brick and mortar side of things.
Right. Definitely. I think that was a great point, because I think Facebook's changing a lot recently with their ad campaigns, and that's a big topic of, in the real estate space, because a lot of agents like to run pay-per-click ads on real
Yeah.
estate. There's a lot of marketers out there. So, in your opinion, do you think, when you're running a business, should you just try to be a little bit more diversified in your marketing efforts? I know you're doing a lot on many different platforms, because I also know people who are, very focused, and they rely on one platform, whether if it's pay-per-click ads or YouTube video marketing, or whatever it is, right? So I mean, is it just being open to it, or should you just try to explore as much as possible in the beginning, so you're never taken out?
No, I mean it's a very, very valid question. Just start with what you know. I mean, if you I don't know if you've used in Instagram for years, right?
Right.
And that's your platform. I mean, go to town on that, because nothing guarantees that the algorithm is not going to change on any of them, right? Here's the thing: like whatever you do when it comes to marketing, start collecting emails. Like, don't sleep on that. Oh, emails are dead. They're so, 2000s or whatever. But it's not true. It's the one database that you actually own. Think about it. Have you ever gotten kicked out of your Instagram account?
Yes. I
All right,
have.
what happens? And I don't. So if you have a ton of followers in there, like you have no access to them, right? Can
Right.
somebody take away that spreadsheet that's sitting on your desktop that's got all the emails of the people that have opted into your stuff, right?
No, like that's
No.
that's yours.
Exactly. It's yours. So it's your database. It's whatever you do with your marketing, find a way to start bringing those people into your space. Email works. It's not dead. It's the fastest way to reach out to people. So whatever platform you're using, make sure that you use that as a route to collect stuff, and lead with value. It's going to be the best thing. If you're dropping, I don't know, if you're creating video, if you're creating content, I put a lot of content on my YouTube channel and Instagram, and do a lot of reels and stuff like that. And it's tangible stuff. It's pragmatic stuff, things that people can actually implement to wholesale stuff, things on mindset, but it's not theoretical stuff. It's actually
Mhm.
instruction. You know what I mean? So I think about that, and I think, okay, that's valuable. That's a valuable piece of information. I'm leading with that. I'm putting that out there. The crazy thing is that a lot of people are gonna, go towards the kid, kitty videos, the
Yeah.
kittens doing,
Right.
playing and doing their thing, as opposed to a video on entrepreneurship and
Right.
you know, something that we deem as valuable, right? But then again, what you're doing is you're segmenting your audience. It's not about, I don't think it's
Mhm.
about the likes. It's about, okay, what's my niche audience? Like, what does that look like, right? And then
Right.
you end up with this, higher degree of engagement. But marketing really comes down to leading with value. It's, okay, cool. The latest song or whatever may help you push it, but at the end of the day, the consumption and people coming back intentionally to your own space is big. It's going to be because you placed some type of value in their path.
Right. Exactly. I think there's a lot of people who use social media, or try to use social media, and they do too much with, trying to figure out the algorithm, right? They try to,
Right.
we call it like, in SEO, they call it like black hat, white hat, like
Yeah.
black hat tactics to get your stuff ranked, get your, get
Yeah.
more followers. That's not sustainable, right? That's, anything like that.
Well, I mean, it's going to change next week, and they're going to have to figure it out, all over again. But again, like, I mean, one thing that just works, and since I started doing stuff, even on the buyer side, for example, we have to collect cash buyers, right?
Right.
We ask for their email. Like, they
Mhm.
go to a landing page, and then we get the email. They get, access to our property list, and they become VIP buyers and whatnot. Now we can actually, reach out to them directly, as opposed to, social media. So all that stuff, yeah, I mean, it makes sense to move quick, right? If you
Mhm.
do PPC ads and Facebook ads and all that stuff, you're gonna reach an audience, a lot faster. Gotcha, guaranteed,
Right.
right? But again, if something changes, it's such a sensible a sensitive, structure that we have no control over. I mean, that's what makes me nervous. I don't want to build an audience for 10 years and then you have YouTube come in and then block it out. Now I got nobody to
Right.
market to, you know what I mean? So whatever you're doing, just make sure that you take it out of that social media context into, something that you own. And I mean, to me, unless you find something better, it's going to be an email list.
Right. That's the only thing I think digitally right now that just doesn't, like, if email goes away, I think, there's a radical change, and
I mean,
there's
we
other
have, listen, bro, if that goes away, we have bigger problems.
right. Yeah. If email goes away, there's
Yeah,
something else going
you're
on.
not going to be worried about emails. I mean, it's just a communication, foundation now at this point, right?
Yeah.
It's what it is. So
Yeah, everybody has an email, or like if you have a social media, if somebody has a social media account,
yeah,
if they can see you on YouTube, if they can see you on TikTok, if they can see you on Instagram, if they can even see a pay-per-click ad on
yeah,
Facebook, they have an email, right? Even Google now like basically requires you to sign up so that they can see ads and stuff. So they do have an email. It's just now up to you to go out and capture it. And this is, something I love, tell people all the time. Like, you can build all the Facebook groups, all the big followings that you want, but if you're not capturing emails, any day of the week, it could just all disappear and
yeah,
vanish.
yeah, exactly. I mean, all those efforts, I mean, they go somewhere else. And it's, I mean, it's frustrating, right? When your account starts acting up and whatever, like, it's just, it's not solid to me. It's not a solid, thing that I have a really good grip on.
Right.
But emails, I mean, I can take them to different providers, and then as long
Yeah.
as I set up, they're cleaned up, and deliverability is good, they're engaged, like, I'm gonna be okay, dropping a campaign. Now,
Right.
if you're selling anything, right? Think about it, this way. When you're dropping ads, you're kind of fishing, right? You're just kind
Mhm.
of, throwing
Right.
your line out there, see if somebody bites. But when you have an email list and you hit it and you target it directly, like, you're hunting. You're not, it's the difference between sitting there and waiting for something to bite, as opposed to, okay, I know these people are, interested somehow. Now I'm going to target them directly.
Right.
If you're rolling out a new product, or whatever that is, like, you hit your email campaign. So as far as
Right.
marketing goes, when it comes to things, and we do the same thing even on the wholesale side of business. It's we email lists for VIP buyers. Like, it's one of the first things that we hit. Next thing is going to be text messaging, and anything that gives you that ability to have that direct contact.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's so important to have that. And I think there's not enough people right now learning email skill sets, and more
Yeah.
people they want to learn the lead generation skill sets, right? They want to learn TikTok. I think always go back to TikTok, because like, I don't even have TikTok on my phone. That might be a mistake, but I just see it as like the next shiny thing, right? And especially kind of like looking at the laws of that, it's very volatile. It could go away any second.
Well, when you have, this is my battle with social, and I don't know, maybe old school, but this. I mean, there's so many bots out there, so many fake accounts. There's so many, things that can alter your KPIs, your metrics, when it comes to the efficiency of the campaigns that you're dropping. Um, and it's, if you're spending a lot of money on ads, that can really, do some damage there.
Right.
That's one thing, right? But also think about the audience. It's not a targeted audience, so you may get a bunch of likes because, I don't know, you had a cool car in the video or something. But does that translate or directly into customers or people who are actually going to take advantage of whatever you're offering, or is it just a vanity, a metric? So for the most part,
Yeah.
for what I've seen, it usually ends up being vanity metrics.
Yeah.
So having a ton of followers and that sort of thing doesn't necessarily translate to direct dollars, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna bring revenue in because of the exposure, but it's I don't think it correlates directly.
Yeah, I don't think it does. I think a lot of times, I had happen multiple times where, there's me or one of my agents, they'll, come to me and like, oh my God, I got this reel that I posted on Instagram, and it's got 3,000 views on it. I'm like, well, what's the reel? It's like, it was a robot. And I'm like, well, it doesn't necessarily help your business, right? Like,
Yeah.
and it gets a lot of views, and it doesn't really matter. And I think the other thing I think about all the time is is that the audience that you really want to capture? It's like, if you are like an entrepreneur coach, like what you're doing, right? It's like,
Yeah.
is your audience just on social media, on TikTok every day, like scrolling on TikTok? Like, I don't think so. Like, I'm not trying to, work with somebody
If you're
who's just
doing
on.
deals.
Right. Yeah. They're out doing deals. Right. Like, and that's why I like podcasting, because, people can listen
Yeah.
to this. This is self-development. But I mean, yeah, just right. Like, that's something that you got to think about.
Yeah, it's when it comes to efforts like that. I mean, I'd rather have a smaller engaged audience than this
Yeah.
big broad number of just followers and likes.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just a process, and I guess you can go in a couple of different ways, right? Try to understand everything about everything, but once you figure out Facebook, whatever you knew about Instagram changed. Now you have to go back and learn that one again, and vice versa. So to me, it's just focus on your highest and best. Like, what's are you an entrepreneur because you want to learn the digital space? If that's the case, I mean, you have a digital media company and then you roll with
Right.
that. That's part of your machine. But if you're in the real estate space and you're trying to figure out how Facebook works, like you have a highest and best. Like, you have a higher and best activity that you could be doing. That's income generating, right? It's focus on that kind of stuff, things that align with whatever you're tapping into and what's your high, because you can, I don't know, if you close one real estate deal and you get $10,000-$12,000 out of that on a commission, even on traditional stuff, you can get somebody to run your ads for 6 months. All right. And that's out of your, I mean, it's out of your radar now. Now you go on and you focus on building up, closing 3 or 4 more deals, right? That's your highest and best. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a different skill set. And I think if a realtor or an investor, if they just like end up mastering whether it was Facebook ads or Instagram ads, then I don't know, maybe you take that skill set and then you should do something else with it, because there's other people paying for that skill set.
It's too much. I mean, there's a lot of things to know, to understand, right? Like how deal structure, market activity, that sort of thing. Like that has a lot better return on my time, for example, than trying to figure out how social media is changing algorithms on a regular basis. So does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I mean, because like you were just saying, right? Like that's a different business, right? You can, if you want to be a digital marketer, be a digital marketer. There's other ways to make money, right? And even like YouTube stars, if you want to have like 1 million followers, do what Mr. Beast is doing, and he's making like a couple $1 billion a year. So so it's a different model. It's I think it's people need to think about this as well. So
I mean, you pick the lane that you're in, pick your track. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You can't do everything. And that's why outsourcing and systems exist. So,
exactly.
Yeah. So, so kind of shifting topics a little bit here as we kind of like get to the end of the interview and, make sure we're respecting your time. So I have to ask this because you're big in wholesaling, and I know a lot of investors and some wholesalers as well. So I know there's a couple of different states here in the US that are changing their laws when it comes to wholesaling. Some of them are even requiring a license, like in Illinois and in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, if you were a wholesaler today, and I know you work with a lot of students who do wholesaling, do you go out there and suggest that they spend some time to get their real estate license? Or is it something that you tell them, maybe until the law changes, you don't have to go and do that?
Yeah, I would, if it's not your thing, I would leave it on the back burner for now, but it's going to change. I mean, what happens is it's kind of like that 6-minute mile, right? I don't know if you know the story, but nobody was able to run a 6-minute mile or a 4-minute mile, I think it was. The first time that the first guy did it, like there was people that came after it. Same thing with states. They'll take a model and then, if one state already went through it, they'll look at that and then they'll model a policy after that. So I think it's only a matter of time before it becomes licensed and more of a regulated activity. Right now, we don't have that. There are changes that are taking place. Some states do require you to have a professional real estate license in order to do wholesale deals in there. Some other states just require disclosure. For example, Arizona, here they ask us to disclose that we are wholesalers and we're selling a wholesale property or contract, right? Also to the buyer and to the seller, both parties. So everybody has to know that we're a wholesaler, and it's got to be. So it's definitely headed that way. I've never had any issues with having both the license and wholesaling. The
Right.
only reason why somebody would have an issue with having a license while wholesaling is it's because your broker does not allow you to wholesale. If they
Right.
don't, move brokerages. I mean, there's a
Right.
ton of brokerages out there that allow you to wholesale stuff. So move brokerages, find one that doesn't care, and they'll be okay. There's no fiduciary, there's no representation in
Mhm.
wholesale. But I think it edifies you still as a professional, right? Like, oh, listen, I'm also a real estate agent. I'm not trying to list your property or anything, but it gives you that sense of professionalism and responsibility. And the other reason why it would give you issues is if you're not being transparent with your clients, if you're not disclosing that you're a real estate agent, if you're trying to be shady and sneak up things during the transaction process, like
Yeah.
fortunately a lot of wholesalers do. They'll try to get paid from outside of escrow, or and just be transparent about what you're doing. You know what I mean? If you
Right.
do business right, and you act like a good human, you should be okay.
Right. Yeah. And the people who are concerned are the ones that are, they should be concerned because they're not doing the right things, right? They're trying to be unethical. So, but yeah, man. So, dude, thanks so much for being on the show today. I think you shared a lot of valuable knowledge with us. I mean, I definitely learned a lot myself as well, and I really enjoyed, what you had to share. So, for those people listening out there who want to maybe learn more about wholesaling or kind of want to reach you on social media, maybe they do sit on TikTok every day and they just want to look at your stuff, right? What are some best ways to reach you? And we'll make sure to link it down below as well.
I'm pretty active on social media, so
Yeah.
you can find me anywhere on as a Rafael Cortez CEO. My main website is ceopulse.com. If you want to find out more about wholesaling, I have a free wholesaling course and a couple other products along with coaching at reiwholesaling.com.
Mhm.
So yeah, people can
Okay.
find me there.
Awesome. Yeah. So we'll make sure to link all that down below, and you guys make sure to check that out. And Rafael, I want to thank you again for being here and sharing your knowledge with us. And for our people listening in today, thanks for tuning in. Make sure to give it a thumbs up or a subscribe button, a like or a hit, wherever you do with it, a tap on your phone or whatever. But in any case, Rafael, is there anything you want to leave with the audience before we sign off here? Any last thoughts?
One of my I guess one of the biggest ones is think of we glorified hustle. We glorify
Mhm.
hustle all the time, right? But it's not sustainable. Hustle is a season, it's not a business strategy. And we have to shift our mindset from that hustler mentality to the entrepreneur mentality if we want to remain in business for a long time, right? Stay sustainable. So just consider that if you're just getting into business, eventually you're going to have to, create that systematic approach to things and think, who can help me as opposed to how can I do things, right? Who can I partner up with? Who can I learn from? Who can I squat up with to do more with less, as opposed to how can I tackle everything myself and figure shit out?
Right. I love that. Hustle is not a business strategy. I tell people all the time, why do you want to hustle when you can just prosper? So
Yeah.
thanks for sharing that. And I appreciate you for being on the show today. I want to thank you again. And for our audience tuning in, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys on the next show. Take care.